The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, here we go on a Tuesday. We are loaded up. It is Georgia week, Tennessee, Georgia, with all kinds of implications on the board. So coming up on the program, Mike Griffith with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution will visit with us a little bit later in the program. I've worked closely with Mike, so I know kind of the direction that he was going in yesterday. And Caleb, it was how Nico Iamaleava has handled the wealth that is NIL better than Carson Beck. I happen to know that that's what Mike Griffith thinks about Carson Beck, and that's part of the reason that Beck hasn't lived up to his preseason hype. Also on the program today, Tuesdays mean John Adams, so we look forward to that this day in Tennessee sports history. Stat of the day, how far can the Vols go with Gaston Moore? And again, we believe that Nico Iamaleava is going to play Saturday against Georgia. That's where we stand. But I didn't think that Josh Heupel, when he addressed the media, completely convinced me. So we've got a lot to get to. Eli Drinkwitz selfishly says any two-loss team in the SEC should reach the college football playoff because he's probably going to be a two-loss team that's trying to make the college football playoff. I know it's self-serving, but I actually agree with him. Would a two-loss SEC team get in over a one-loss Indiana or Penn State? Football IQ as well. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Caleb, how are you, sir?
I am good. Dave, you did not tell me my hair was sticking up at a certain spot. I think Dave just likes to make me look bad sometimes, guys, because it can up his looks. So he purposely tries to tear me down.
Well, I need a haircut bad. So, yes, this might be one of the times that I've undermined your hairness because mine ain't looking so good. Go ahead and click that like button. And if you haven't subscribed to this point, we would greatly appreciate you doing so. Again, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Also, portions of the program are brought to you by our good friends at Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. And I was talking to them this morning about my daughter's car. It's going to get all taken care of. Thanks to Quality Tire Pros, qualitytirepros.com. Tell Bo that Dave Hooker and Off the Hook Sports said, hello. Hey, Bo. How are you? All right. Let's get to the comments about Nico Iamaleava. And here is Josh Heupel talking about Nico yesterday in his Monday press conference.
Trying to pull it up now. Just give me 1 second, everybody. Just bear with me here. And this is Josh Heupel updating us on Nico Iamaleava.
Yeah, he was with us today. Had a really good day. Feel like he'll be in great shape for Saturday. But you guys can monitor the whatever the report is that comes out on Wednesday and track it through the week. But certainly feel like he'll be in a good spot.
Is there any value in giving Gaston any more reps?
One more quick
reps with the ones in case he is needed Saturday.
Yeah, Gaston gets reps throughout the course of practice every day, every week, and that's why he went out and played the way that he did too.
All right, couple of things to unpack there. Today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
We can call it gamesmanship or line, but there is a real chance that that's at play because I thought Josh Heupel picked his words very carefully. He said he was with us. He did not say he was on the practice field. Caleb. And that to me is significantly different than saying he was out there throwing the ball around and looked great. I also, based off what I've been told, believe it is a concussion. And I don't think that a Monday would be a determining factor over whether or not he's ready to play on Saturday. So being with us can be being in the meeting rooms, but you would not necessarily have him on the practice field if he has a concussion suffered in the Saturday night game against Mississippi State. So that's part one. Part two, I think Josh Heupel just absolutely hates discussing injuries. And he said, you can follow along with the injury report, or it's called the participation report, just like the 2-minute warning. I mean, it's like college football doesn't want to copy the NFL. I get it, but it's an injury report. That's exactly what it is. It comes out on Saturday.
They want to copy the NFL. Let's get it out there.
Well, they don't, but they do.
But they are, yes.
Yeah, they don't want to use the same verbiage, but they
from the 2-minute warning to an injury report to an expanded 12-team playoff. Like, can you copy them anymore?
Exactly. So, but they don't want to use the verbiage, so it's a participation report, which is so silly. But that's what Josh Heupel is telling you to refer to. So at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting this morning, I told Caleb, I said, I don't want you to give me your opinion, because we were playing that clip in our meeting this morning. And I said, I don't want you to give me your opinion. I want you to give me your opinion on the air and fresh when we get rolling at 10 a.m. each and every weekday. After hearing that, are you more or less optimistic that Nico Iamaleava is fine right now? That's not to say something couldn't happen in practice. He could take a hit. He could be further concussed. That's not to say that he could improve, but as of right now, does that make you more or less confident that he will play Saturday against Georgia? And we want your thoughts on the message board as well.
Less confident because of the way he answered the Gaston Moore question. Because the truth is, they tried, you're right, he didn't want to give an answer. And then they tried to hammer him to say, well, who's taking first team reps this week? Like, if you say he's out there today, what do you say? Wait till the injury report, but is he practicing with the first team or not? And what did he say, Dave? You know, Gaston takes these first team reps all the time. That's why he was ready to go. I call BS. Gaston does not take first team reps when Nico's healthy. I do not believe that for 1 second. You can tell me if I'm wrong, Dave, but I refuse to believe that Gaston Moore is taking first team reps away from Nico when Nico's fully healthy.
I think at most he probably takes like 10% of the first team reps. And I don't think that's unusual, with the exception of maybe Texas, who has two really good quarterbacks. I think that you're splitting them about 90% at most schools. And I'll tell you why I think that. I believe that because of the transfer portal. Let's be honest. If something happens to Dylan Gabriel or something happens to whoever, but Cam Ward at Miami, you're not going to win the national championship. You don't have depth to fall back on anymore. I can remember a time that Alabama, it felt like they had a game manager at quarterback, and if one guy got hurt, another guy could step in and still win a championship. So I wouldn't begrudge or critique Josh Heupel if he gave 100% of the first team snaps to Nico Iamaleava. I don't think that's the case. I think it's probably like 10%, but 10% would still be woefully low compared to old standards. Caleb, it would be more like 20%. But if he's giving all of his snaps to Nico thinking to himself, it's him or nothing, then I can't blame him for that, because I don't think Jake Merklinger is anywhere close to ready, but has the ability. I don't think that they think they can win a national championship. And let's remember, this offense has struggled. So if they've given 100% of the practice snaps to Nico, I got no problem with that.
No, I don't have any problem with it either. But if that means if they're giving some of the practice snaps to Gaston Moore, then they're concerned about just how healthy Nico is, aren't they? Isn't that what that means? Or am I missing something here?
No, I think it's kind of the old coaching acumen that you would always give practice snaps to the first team practice snaps to the second quarterback. But I think that Heupel knows that in his heart of hearts as a coach, but also knows that that's a little antiquated because nobody has quarterback depth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you're still leading it. You're still giving off the vibe that. So you don't believe him that he's giving Gaston more first team reps this week.
I believe he is this week.
But if he is, then that is a concern.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, certainly it's a concern. I mean, if he has a concussion and he's cleared today or Wednesday, which I've told can be the case, then that doesn't mean he can't go out there and take another hit and get concussed once again. And what are you going to do with those first team practice reps? Are you going to suddenly try to get Jake Merklinger ready? I mean, listen, if he's not available to practice, somebody's got to take the first team reps, right?
I mean, you would think, but again, you would also, this is why I think there's a concern, because he tried to quell all fears of it when he said, oh, he was out there today, but then we anticipate him ready to go. But then he dropped the whole wait till the injury report. And then he said Gaston Moore maybe taking first team snaps. And they were like, well, wait a second here. You were so nonchalant as if you weren't worried about Nico at the start. It seemed like you tried to quell all of our fears. But then you say that, yeah, that's why I'm more concerned. Because based on what he said on Sunday, he made it sound like it's no big deal.
Yep. A couple of things on the message board that I do want to address. Unsung said that was the first interview. Mondays, I hear they don't practice on the field. Are y'all going to show the latest hypo pressure? That's the only pressure he had on Monday. So I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to then or there. He has a Monday afternoon press conference. Then his availability consists of Wednesday on ball calls and Wednesday on the SEC teleconference. So I'm not sure what you're getting at there, Unsung. But Orange Blood says Heupel isn't giving anyone anything, and the media members aren't going to press the issue. Well, no, I disagree. I thought they did press the issue, and there were a lot of people that were upset on social media by continuing to ask that question. Guys, it's not the media's job to continue to press the narrative that Nico is just fine and that he's going to play. It's their job to find out how likely he is to play. And there are not a lot of leaks, unlike the Butch Jones days, where I could have told you if he was taking first team reps throughout the week. There's not a lot of leaks anymore. Caleb, I ask you this. If you were whatever percentage sure that Nico Iamaleava was going to play on Saturday against the Bulldogs, how might that have changed? The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. Banks. All right, Caleb, where were you yesterday? And has your mind changed after hearing those comments?
I think he's going to play yesterday. And yeah, my mind's changed now. My mind is they don't know how healthy he is and they're concerned. I don't know any other way to look at that, honestly, based on the way they said it. So taking that into account, yeah, I'm more concerned than anything now. And I don't think I'm unfounded either, based on how Josh Heupel said that.
No, I wouldn't knock you for that. Here are my thoughts. I was 80% yesterday, and I'm still 80% today. That didn't really change my mind significantly. So the poll question, how confident are you that Nico plays against Georgia? Less than 50%. Wow, that's leading so far. 51 to 79%, 80%, and then 100%. So less than 50% is 38%, 51 to 79%, 28%, 80%, which just happens to be where I am, 17%. 100% gets 14% of the vote. Now, I want to be very clear here. I am not criticizing Josh Heupel if he's playing gamesmanship and Nico's still seeing stars and he's saying he's going to play on Saturday, because that's what you're supposed to play with Georgia coming up. You can call that line if you want to be hardcore, but I thought he kind of danced around it a little bit. Didn't say he will definitely play on Saturday. I have no problem with the gamesmanship, and I think you could tell the frustration that he's had and a lot of coaches I've been told have had by this whole participation report, injury report that has to come out basically because of gambling on Wednesday. Now, all that being said, Vegas doesn't think that Nico's going to play because that number wouldn't be pushing 10, and Georgia is about a 10-point favorite. That number would be around 7 if they thought Nico was going to play. I'm just telling you, the guys out in the desert do not think that Nico is going to play. That number could move. They could hear some inside information. But right now, they don't think he's going to play.
No, or they at least don't think he's going to be 100%. They think he's going to be severely banged up if he comes in. I don't know if they think he's going to play or not. But yeah, no, Nico's injury is impacting Vegas, how Vegas is setting that line. And honestly, we're going to talk about this later, Dave, but if Nico were fully healthy, if you watched Carson Beck play last weekend, you would think Tennessee has a legitimate shot in this game on Saturday.
No.
So
I think Tennessee, with the running game and the defense that they have, I think they have a legitimate shot with Gaston. I think they have a real shot. And as a matter of fact, I went ahead and went out on a limb. I never make early week picks, but I think Tennessee beats Georgia if Nico Iamaleava is healthy. And I don't think in the 2 years we've worked together, Caleb, I've done a Monday pick, but I just feel strongly that Tennessee is a better football team than Georgia. Obviously, if you don't have Nico, that changes things. Dylan Sampson, by some, is considered 8th best in the Heisman odds. What the H? Brought to you by Medicare Mystic.
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
All right, do me a favor, Caleb, and pull up the Heisman odds from the guys in Vegas. And then we have a column on OffTheHookSports.com I would encourage you to check out because we had insiders weighing in on Tennessee's running back Dylan Sampson and in his Heisman chances as the Vols prepare for Georgia. So let's start with my thoughts. My thoughts are, and I'm a Heisman voter, he would be in my top 5 right now. Let's assume he ends the year averaging 150, 160 yards. He keeps going at a high rate of production. He's in my top 5. Now, I only get 3 selections, so that really doesn't matter. But where would he be, Caleb? Let me ask you first before we take a look at Vegas and some other Heisman voters.
where would he be in mine personally?
Yeah.
Let me think. I would probably have him behind Travis Hunter, Cam Ward, Dylan Gabriel, Jackson Dart. I'd probably have those as my top 4. And
so you're right at top 5.
Yeah, I'm right at top 5. You could convince me either way between him or Shedeur Sanders. You could convince me either way on the 5th one.
Yep. I think Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter are actually going to split that Colorado vote. So I actually see a scenario that if Dylan Sampson continues to play well and they beat Georgia, that he could actually win this thing. And I'm not just saying get invited to New York. I was talking to a Heisman voter last night, and I said, we've seen guys come out of nowhere before and win this thing, and I don't think there's a clear-cut favorite. So I think that bodes well for Dylan Sampson. So I polled a couple of Heisman voters and guys that I really respect their opinion. Knoxville talk show host Will West has Simpson 8th on his list behind Cam Ward, Ashton Genty, Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe, Sanders, Oregon quarterback Dylan Gabriel, Colorado athlete Travis Hunter, and Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart. All right, Jimmy Himes, he said he's considering Sampson to be a strong candidate, saying, quote, "I strongly consider Tennessee running back Dylan Sampson a Heisman Trophy candidate. He is on pace to set Tennessee's single-season records for rushing yards and total touchdowns. If he has a huge game against Georgia and the Vols win and he continues to churn out 130-yard games, he'll be hard to ignore. Also, his candidacy could depend on how the others perform." I don't see a lot of slam dunk players right now. I don't either. I mean, I don't see a Cam Newton out there. They're just like, he's got to lose it. I mean, there's not a guy that's got it in the bag right now. And there really isn't until you get to November anyway. I hate it when people get too fired up about the Heisman in October. It's won in November. John Adams said that he would have, and we'll visit with John a little bit later in the program. He said Sampson's the best running back in the SEC, but he would have him 8th. Ryan McGee of ESPN was probably the strongest proponent for Dylan Sampson, saying, quote, top 5 for sure. I'd have him 3rd with a chance to jump to number 1 at Georgia. He's criminally overlooked. Now that Cam Ward is falling off radars, I'm hoping he'll get more attention. Chuck Oliver, who hosts the Chuck Oliver Show, says the most outstanding eligible player in college football is Travis Hunter, then Shedeur, then probably 5 others in 3rd, and Sampson is one of those 5. Paul Feinbaum said he has Sampson in the top 5. Knoxville talk show host Tyler Ivins thinks Sampson has a long way to go. He agrees with Vegas, who has him pegged at about 13th. Let's take a look at those Vegas numbers and where Dylan Sampson is by the guys that build big buildings out in the desert. That's easy for me to say. Medicare Misty, licensed in over 40 states, can help you with your Medicare needs, no matter where you're watching, and no charge from her to you.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
All right, so what does Vegas think about Dylan Sampson's Heisman odds?
I'm pulling those up now, and all right. So looking at people who are leading. All right, so let's just go down this list, Dave, real quick. And Dylan Sampson is way down there. And on FanDuel, you can't even bet on him. As I'm looking at it right now, Dave, you can't even place a bet on Dylan Sampson. So, like,
I saw him at 25,000 to 1.
Plus 25,000 or 25,000 to 1?
Plus 25,000, excuse me. Isn't that the same thing?
Yeah, but see, that could be on some. FanDuel doesn't have it. Vegas Insider doesn't. Vegas Insider has them down at 16th, and they're looking at plus 20,000 to 1. So right around what you said. So Dylan Sampson's ranging from 20,000 to plus 30,000, and could be ranging anywhere from 16th to 12th in many of the Heisman ratings, or even outside of the top 25. It's such a broad situation that it's just, I mean, honestly, it's kind of crazy looking at it. But players that are clearly ahead of him. Travis Hunter, no issue there, right?
I don't know. I'm an MVP guy. So would Colorado still have the same record without Travis Hunter? I think they would not. No, they would. No, they would not. No, they would not have the same record. I think they lose 4 other games without Travis Hunter. Okay, let's do it this way. Let me tell you that I think they're above, but I'll make an argument against. How about that? And that would be my argument against. I think Travis Hunter is a fantastic player, but I think at the end of the day, that team revolves around Shedeur Sanders. So that would be my argument against, but I don't have a problem with him being in front of Dylan Sampson. Who else?
All right, so Travis Hunter is ahead of him. Now, I'm probably going to agree with what you say when you respond to this, but you have to understand where the voters are coming from. But Ashton Jeanty at Boise State. I mean, the guy's having a Barry Sanders type year at Boise State.
I do not have Ashton Jeanty because of the level of play. If I had a vote for one running back, it would not be Ashton Jeanty. It would be Dylan Sampson if things go chalk the rest of the year. And let's say that Jeanty's right at that Barry Sanders record. Remember, he has an extra game to do it. And so that's a little overinflated in my opinion. And they don't play the same run defense out there. So go right ahead. Who's next?
But Dave, you have to be fair on that. You're right. They don't play the same run defense. They also don't have the same run blocking. I mean, Dylan Sampson is running behind the best interior line in college football, maybe, with Cooper Mays, Javonte Spraggins, and Andre Carrick.
Okay.
You wouldn't trade that trio for anybody.
No, but I'll just tell you that I think that Sampson is a better player than Genty and will be a better player in the NFL. That's a little bit of eyeball test, but that's where I am.
Okay, so after Genty, Dylan Gabriel. Again, I don't think you have a problem with Dylan Gabriel being ahead of Dylan Sampson.
Yeah, he's kind of been the default guy, but I thought at the beginning of the year, but as long as Oregon's number one in a year of which I don't think anybody's really separated themselves from the pack, he might actually win it. So I don't have a problem with him being ahead of Dylan Sampson at this point. By the way, poll question, which we want you to vote on. Why isn't Dylan Sampson a Heisman contender? Arkansas lost, Vols bias, not a quarterback. He still will be. Go ahead. Who's next, Caleb?
All right, next. Still ahead of him, even though they lost, even though this does open the door, is Cam Ward. And I think you and I both thought Cam Ward was running away with this thing until last weekend. And that's brought him back down to earth. I don't think anybody could say that that's brought him back down to earth enough, though, to be behind Dylan Sampson, because without Cam Ward, Miami's got 4 losses on their schedule right now. Easily. Not even a debate.
I thought that Miami would slip. I didn't necessarily think it was going to be against Georgia Tech. So while, yes, Cam Ward is kind of winning it as the MVP of one of the surprise/best teams, but I didn't think it would last. So I'm not surprised. But if you want to put him above Dylan Sampson right now, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So next, a couple that I'm not so sure I agree with, and I'll give you that. Curtis Rourke for Indiana has insane stats. Indiana is undefeated. Indiana has won 2 games without Curtis Rourke at quarterback this year.
Yeah, no, that's a no.
So,
it's not there.
Jalen Milroe is still ahead of Dylan Sampson. And honestly, after what Alabama did to LSU this past weekend, I think that it's going to be hard for Dylan Sampson to surpass him unless he runs for like 200 yards against Georgia.
The thing about Jalen Milroe is he's such a physical specimen that some voters could see that. And if they want to just say, I vote on the best player, which is arguable how you should vote, he might be an easy way out. Who else?
Yep. Okay, so after Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart is ahead of him. I think you've been very high on Jackson Dart. I don't know how. I mean, I'd probably put Jackson Dart ahead of him too. I default to quarterbacks, so like I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I'm very high on Jackson Dart, but something tells me that Lane Kiffin would have found another quarterback to run that offense at a high level. And that just might be the most talented roster in the SEC. So I would have Sampson over Dart, and I really like Dart.
Shedeur, let's see, I'd have Dart over Sampson. Production at quarterback is going to outweigh it for me most of the time. Shedeur Sanders, by the way, you talked about him earlier.
Yeah, he to me would have to be above. But if you're looking for Dylan Sampson to get in there, I think that Shedeur and Travis could split the vote. And don't forget this, it's the vote's largely made by media members, and they probably do not like Deion Sanders because he made it personal with a reporter there. That shouldn't factor in, but I'm just giving you ways that Dylan Sampson can get back in this race. All
right, another one who I don't think should be on here, but is Quinn Ewers. I mean, he missed a good chunk of the season, and in their one big game, he played like complete garbage.
Yeah, so, I'm okay with you missing one game, but he missed like 2.5 games. So that, to me, automatically takes you out of contention.
And he, again, in their marquee game against Georgia, he was horrible. So, yeah. Okay, so Will Howard with Ohio State. They do have a loss, but Ohio. Why?
I just don't think he's very good. I don't think he's good at.
Do you vote based on eye test or production, Dave? Honest question. Do you vote based on eye test or production as a voter?
All the above. I mean, I hate to cop out on you, but all the above.
Because, I mean, he is completing 74% of his passes.
Yeah, but I don't think they play anybody. And
they just played Penn State, and they played Oregon before that.
Well, and they lost to Oregon, and they very well could have lost to Penn State, but Penn State's coached by James Franklin. All right, who else?
I mean, you could make an argument that they played a tougher schedule than Tennessee has to this point.
Penn
State and Oregon are – I mean, the only team Tennessee's played that rivals either of them is Alabama.
All right, who else?
Okay, so next is Cade Klubnik at Clemson. No. I think that loss to Louisville hurt them pretty significantly. And then lastly, Drew Aller at Penn State.
Peak IV hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville live your life to the fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. Go to peakivhydration.com. If we can drop that in the chat. Coming up, it'll be Mike Griffith. But again, remember Peak IV Hydration. Both of those patches you can order online with the energy and the hydration. It works. It's awesome. They bring you Jacob Warren each and every Monday. peakivhydration.com. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Mike Griffith coming up next of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He's in town to cover Georgia and Tennessee. More after this. Again, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Experience quality and value in this pre-owned 2024 Ford Maverick XLT all-wheel drive, $31,990. 23 Ford Expedition 4x4 Limited, $66,590. 2023 Ford F-150 XLT Super Crew 4x4, $47,995. Local you trust, pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
This next guy is one of the best, and one of the best covering the SEC. One of the best have to stir some things up as well. I'll give him that. And he's in Knoxville, but he carries the flag with him. The Dog Nation flag is right behind him as Mike Griffith joins us now. Mike Griffith with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Mike, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great, Dave. I actually drove back to Athens last night after Coach Heupel's brief but informative press conference. It sounds like Tennessee's got a healthy quarterback raring to go.
I guess. We were just talking about that. What he said that, but he's kind of played games before with Cooper Mays last year and didn't play at Florida. And then he kind of played games with Lance Hurd, didn't play at Arkansas this year. I'm sorry, Oklahoma this year. How do you come away from that? Because I came away scratching my head a little bit more whether or not he'll play. I think he will. I'm 80% that he'll play, but I was definitely not 100% sure. What about you?
I don't think Josh Heupel would mislead us. I mean, I think he's a straight shooter. I mean,
come on.
That I don't.
Come on. Cooper Mays was definitely going to play against Florida last year.
And you don't know if that was Heupel or Mays. I mean, Cade Mays here, there were times, listen, I'm not going to get too far into the weeds, but look, we got a great matchup. I'm looking at these teams. I'm looking at common opponents. Who has the best win? Who has the worst loss? Statistically, certainly Tennessee looks really good defensively. I mean, these are John Chavis-like numbers when you look at, top 10 rankings in all these categories. You got one of the best running backs in the country right now. I mean, the thing that impresses me most is, the whole Josh Heupel thing. When he was first hired, to flash back, there were a lot of critics and said, oh, he runs some gimmicky out. Listen, there's nothing gimmicky about this. These guys are going to punch in the mouth, and these guys play defense, and these guys are sound on offense. They can pound the ball. He's got a really talented quarterback. He does a great job protecting him with the run game and with the great defense where, as long as Nico doesn't make bad, decisions, I mean, this is a legit top 5 playoff team right now. I mean, Tennessee is leading the SEC. Now, Dave, if you wanted to be a critic and say that the SEC schedule makers set this all up, having 8 teams with 2 losses or less, if you wanted to suggest that maybe they did that for higher ratings and to get more fans engaged to make more money, you could suggest that. There's people at Georgia that wonder a little bit about playing Texas, Alabama, and Ole Miss on the road. They wonder how that schedule came about, why it came about. I mean, this is Georgia's first home game in 5 weeks. I didn't make out the schedule, but there's people that wonder if maybe people would manipulate the schedule to make more money. They wonder if maybe the Big Ten does. I don't know. Has Penn State beat a ranked opponent yet? I don't think so. I don't know. Who's Texas? What's their best win? Vanderbilt? I'm just saying scheduling has something to do with it. But here nor there, as I compare Georgia and Tennessee's schedule and common opponents, pretty even. Tennessee beats Florida at home in overtime. Georgia gets them on the road, Jacksonville. They call that a neutral site. It's like 300 miles from here and 60 miles from Gainesville, but whatever. Neutral crowd. But if Lagway doesn't go down, how does it come out? And that was a close game in the fourth quarter. So, Tennessee beats Alabama at home by a touchdown. Georgia loses to Alabama on the road by a touchdown. It's really interesting to see Mississippi State. That'd have been a runaway laughter if Coach Heupel hadn't rested Nico as a precaution in the second half, right? So I was surprised he left the running back in there, though, after he hurt his ankle. It seems to me he'd want to rest that guy. But he's a workhorse, and he's got a record within reach, so I guess I understand that. But pretty even as I look at these teams' common opponents.
No, and I texted you, I think it was after the Alabama game, and I know Carson Beck almost led them back, but I just thought there were a lot of instances where his arm strength was lacking, and I was curious if something was wrong with his arm. But just in general, what do you think of Beck's performance? Because, man, he's turning it over like a 57 Chevy.
Yeah, well, I got asked a question. We're at the point in Georgia, and you've been here before, where now the media is getting mad at each other. That's when you know that things are getting pretty serious, when the media so I did this Atlanta radio station show this morning, and the host totally set me up. You couldn't have done it any better, Dave, and you're one of the best at this. You'll appreciate this. So not only do they play the Kirby clip, but they play the question too now, right? So the question is there any thought to replacing Carson Beck? And I'm not thinking about who asked the question. And the question is, am I more surprised by the answer or the question? Well, Georgia doesn't have a backup quarterback. I mean, this Gunnar Stockton guy, he may be in a high school Hall of Fame, and that he'll sell a lot of cars someday. But this kid ain't in Carson's class. Carson has NFL talent, right? And I said I'm a lot more surprised by the question because we all know the answer. Kirby's not going to bail on Carson Beck. I mean, Carson didn't play that bad in the last game. Now, if you want to look at the last 6 games, you're talking at 12 picks, 13 sacks, 4 fumbles. You could conclude, in conclusivity, you could look at that and say, boy, he's really struggling. But if you look at what he did on the road against the best front 7 in college football, look these guys up. It's ridiculous, this free agent class. And it's not just last year's with Walter Nolan and Princely, I can't pronounce his last name, from Florida. They got some guys from Tech. They got some guys from Auburn, and they've been in a program a few years. They got one guy they actually recruited who leads them in sacks. I think all but 4 of their starters are transfers right now. On the road, in the rain, missing your best offensive lineman, your best running back's banged up, your two best receivers aren't playing right now, and you're playing an Ole Miss team that just set a school record for 63 points in SEC. Not much margin for error. Carson's interception came in the fourth quarter on a tip pass on a fourth down play, right? He had his ex-receiver drop a ball that hit him in the numbers. He had the Stanford tight end that hit him in the numbers, dropped the ball. He got blindsided and fumbled, had a freshman tailback fumble. You just can't put all that on quarterback. So I said, and the reporter was upset, and look, I understand why we sometimes in the media, we're in a tough spot because we have to ask questions that we already know the answer to, but we need the coach to say that, right? So people,
Sure.
oh, what a stupid question. No, it's just we need the coach to make that statement that he's not changing quarterbacks, because there are some people out there on social media that I don't know if it's a slow day and the View or whatever, and they decide to follow college football, but they really aren't as dialed in as a typical SEC fan would be. And they start going, well, you got to change the quarterback. That's where it all starts, right? Low-hanging fruit. It's not Carson Beck. It's the same guy that played there last year. He just doesn't have the number 2 tight end in fantasy football, Brock Bowers, or the number 20 receiver in fantasy football, Lad McConkey, anymore to throw to. He's got some guys that transfers that didn't work out, and some guys that came back that weren't good enough to start before, and frankly probably aren't good enough to be starting now. But they're the best option because the guys that were 2s and 3s before have transferred off to Syracuse or wherever, because when you're a 2 or a 3 now, you don't wait your turn. You go somewhere else to be the 1 and make a lot of money. And we saw that bite Georgia last year. If Adonai Mitchell sticks around, Kirby's talking about 3 straight national titles. But instead, he goes to Texas and helps Texas beat Alabama and get Texas in the playoffs. So it's a different game now, and Georgia is just as affected as anyone else, because those 2s and 3s that used to be ready to step up, they're not there anymore. Now you got the freshmen that you're trying to coach up on the bottom of the roster. So that's kind of in a nutshell where George is at. And Carson's not the kind of – he's not obviously he's not Jalen Milroe. He can't put the team on his shoulders and run for 190 yards. He's not that kind of quarterback. He's very dependent on his talent. I mean, you look at Peyton Manning's first year in the NFL. He didn't look like that by the time he was done playing, or Steve Young with the Tampa Bay Bucks is a nobody, and he goes to the 49ers, a Hall of Famer. So I think a lot of this has to do with the supporting cast at Georgia, the attrition, and the schedule. Not much margin for error.
So, Mike, taking all this into account, does Georgia have the makeup? Because I've talked a lot about the discipline issues facing Georgia this season and in previous seasons with Kirby Smart. And I'm not saying Kirby Smart's not trying to nip it in the bud. He seems a lot more serious about trying to stop it than Urban Meyer did. I'll put it that way. But has that created a cultural issue to where, do you feel this team has the mental makeup to be able to come out on Saturday and say our backs are against the wall, we have to win this game or else we're screwed? Or do you think that it could all collapse on them because of the discipline issues?
Well, I think those are interesting questions. I don't know that I would put Georgia's disciplinary issues in the same category as Florida's.
Oh, they're not the same. I agree.
Yeah.
How about Tennessee early 2000s?
Well, I don't even think Tennessee's were that bad. I think the Florida media did a great job of trolling Philip Fulmer, naming it the Fulmer Cup when their house was on fire, and a lot of other people bet on it because back then everybody.
But with all fairness, after a sexual assault charge, Philip Fulmer met with a potential victim at a Shoney's on a Sunday morning. That wasn't good.
Well, I'm not talking about management. We're talking about the level of discipline issues here. And I mean, if we want to comb through all the collegiate programs and find out how many players but when as Philip Fulmer would say, what we're seeing though, Caleb, is Philip Fulmer, the first ballot Hall of Famer, once said, the wind blows the hardest at the top of the flagpole. And that's where Georgia's at when you've won 2 back-to-back titles. I mean, Lane Kiffin saying, we got guys that came back for another year just to beat Georgia. We got guys that transferred and said they picked us because they wanted to beat Georgia. You're everybody's extra scout. I'll never forget in 1997, back when there was access, and I knocked on Mike Dubos's door unannounced and walked into his office.
And there was the secretary.
And he actually spent about 20 minutes talking to me. There was a stack of the VHS tapes on the desk, right? And there was like 2, 2, 2, 2, 9. And I said, why you got 9 tapes at Tennessee? He goes, did you see Jamal Lewis last year? I said, yeah. He goes, we got to win that game. They had 9 tapes at Tennessee. That was the team to beat. Philip Fulmer's Tennessee Vols was the team that you circled the wagons for. You spent the whole offseason studying, trying to figure out how you were going to beat those Tennessee Vols. That's where Tennessee football was. That's what Georgia is. And everybody's scheme and game planning, and it's everybody's game of the year. And they've taken a lot of punches, Dave, from a lot of really good teams.
Let me ask you this question. Mike Griffith, nice enough to join us from Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And I know you're focused on your team, so you probably haven't seen every snap of the past four quarters that Nico's played, which I think he's played at a really high level. Would you take Nico or Carson Beck to lead your team on Saturday based off what you've seen? And I know you know Beck probably a little bit better.
It's interesting. I think it would actually be to the benefit of both teams to trade quarterbacks because Carson's a great game manager who gets through his progressions and really doesn't make mistakes. And right now, Georgia could really use a playmaker at quarterback like Nico that could do some things with his legs. So I think it has to do with what you're running and what you have as a supporting cast. And right now, Georgia could really use a mobile playmaker like Nico. And really, I think a lot of Tennessee, I don't want to speak for Tennessee fans, but from what I've seen of Tennessee, if Nico makes good decisions, they're pretty darn unbeatable. But when he makes bad decisions, they get beatable. But again, the guy's only a freshman, so keep that in mind. I mean, you're going to have a different version of this guy the next 2 years. I mean, this guy's he's going to start out next year among the top 5 Heisman Trophy candidates. And really, if Tennessee wins this game and wins out and beats Vanderbilt on the road to end the year and makes the playoff or plays in the SEC championship game, no one says that Nico couldn't finish in the top 10 for the Heisman this year. If he finishes very strong and wins these high profile, who would have ever thought Tennessee and Vanderbilt would be a high profile game, but here we are. If he wins these high profile games, particularly this one with Game Day and SEC Nation, takes down Georgia, takes down Vanderbilt on the road because, they're going to be crowing in Nashville, and then goes to the SEC championship game and beats a Texas or beats Alabama in a rematch or an A&M. I don't know, whoever your projection is out of those 8 teams that are still somehow in the running. I think the guy's fantastic. But Carson Beck came into this year as a projected number 1 and came in as the Heisman Trophy favorite for a reason. Because when he had a good supporting cast, he was pretty close to unbeatable last year. He didn't make a lot of mistakes. I mean, these last 6 games are somewhat of an outlier. When you consider his first 17, he never had more than 1 pick in any of those games. So a lot of this, I think, is circumstantial. Now, the question is, has this affected him? Has this gotten into his head? We have seen frustration. What's it like in the locker room? Is there any finger pointing? How are the receivers and him getting along? How much has the game plan been altered? How much can Tennessee affect the rush? Are they as good as Ole Miss? The numbers wouldn't suggest that. But then again, Ole Miss played a cupcake 4-game preseason schedule. So there's a lot in the balance here that remains to play out.
So,
Mike, I know that I know you probably have to run, but I did want to work this in because I know you, and I have an idea of kind of the angle you were going for when I heard your question at the press conference yesterday. And you talked about Nico, and I'm paraphrasing, so correct me if I misquoted here at all. But you were asking about Nico handling NIL money,
right,
as kind of compared to Carson Beck. And I think what you were driving at, correct me if I'm wrong, is that from all indications I've gotten on and off the record, Nico is a great leader. I don't care if he has $50 million in the bank.
Sure.
But it seems like you're wondering, maybe aloud, correct me if I'm wrong, that Carson Beck is perhaps not that leader now that he's gotten paid and he's showing off pictures of his Lamborghini.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, Carson set himself up for a lot of this. I mean, he got a tattoo on his leg that says "Sky's the limit" and showed it off at media days. I mean, he advertised himself as a guy that wanted to embrace all the pressure that comes with NIL riches. He put the pictures. I mean, the media is not stalking this guy. When you're putting pictures, and he's got 2 social media accounts, one public and one private, of yourself on a private jet on the golf course with a steak in front of you, an expensive Dave Hooker watch on your wrist. When you're putting those things out there, you're telling the Louis Vuitton bags and the dog walk to the game. You're making a statement, and you're telling everybody, hey, I am this dude. and you're kind of setting yourself up. If things don't work out, it's not going to look good. So I do think there's a cautionary, and in Nico's, I mean, he had to keep it quiet for a while. I mean, didn't the Tennessee government kind of rally behind him and change?
Yeah, because technically it was against the rules.
At that time it was. But you know what? I'm not going to tell you everybody wasn't doing. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, that wasn't happening anywhere, right? What did Rick Barnes say? NIL stands for now it's legal, right? I think he said that at a quarterback lunch, and I keep up a little bit. I got some family up there, Dave. So I keep up with the Vols. I keep up with all the SEC, actually. I do. I've only gone to about half the Georgia games. Most of the time I'm sitting in Command Central trying to write about whatever, Alabama getting beat by Vanderbilt. Boy, was that ever amazing. I guess Jalen's agent told him he didn't have to run that game. But when he runs, can anybody beat him? I mean, because let me tell you, this SEC is so wide open, Dave. But this game, it's so exciting. It reminds me of 2 years ago when Tennessee came down here #1 in the college football playoff rankings. And, the stage was set for this epic battle. And I think that the Georgia fans might have been challenged that the crowd wasn't going to be loud, or it wasn't a loud crowd or something like that. And they got all fired up for that game, and the rain came, and almost like an answer. And Jalen Carter decided to cash in on that day. That was a great why in the world are you showing my airborne picture, Dave?
Oh, I didn't know that it was going to go right up. I was going to save it for later, but you look awesome, man. It was Veterans Day yesterday, and I was going to tell you we appreciate your service, but we redid the software, and all the buttons are different yesterday. So I didn't mean to just pop it up. I was going to say thank you for your service.
I would be disappointed if you had not pulled something, Dave. I really would have. I mean,
look at that young Mike Griffith there, man.
That's
if I was like a 20-year-old lady, I'd be like, that's my guy.
That's 18 and a half years old, 6 months after high school graduation, with a rifle in my hand, ready to do what this country needed.
Thank God you didn't have a rifle in your hand when you and I worked together. I'd be a dead man.
Oh, geez.
Mike, I got an honest question for you, and I know this is blasphemous because Kirby Smart has 2 national titles. But if things get close and it comes down to wits of like coaching in-game management decisions, who do you have more faith in, Josh Heupel or Kirby Smart, to not make a mistake and panic in the moment?
Well, honestly, I don't think either one of these coaches would panic. I mean, you're talking about, 2 jet fighter pilots here. I mean, these are 2 great coaches. It's going to come down to whose kids execute and who's had their kids better prepared for the moment. I mean, say this for Tennessee, they've got a lot of momentum right now. They've won 4 in a row. Well, they were at home for 4 games. Georgia's been on the road 5 weeks in a row. They're coming off a really bad loss. Tennessee's got confidence. The kids they brought out there yesterday, I'm sure they just grabbed whoever and put them behind the microphone, but they were very comfortable and confident, and they seem to understand. But, so you give Tennessee the momentum. Georgia's played in a lot of games like this. There is something to be said for that. Georgia does have a home crowd. I mean, I think Josh got a pretty good road win earlier this year. I'm trying to see, where did they win at? Not Arkansas.
It was Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. That's a big win.
Yeah.
You went on the road at Oklahoma. That's a good win on the road. So they've kind of taken that monkey off their back. They've proven they can go into a hostile environment and beat a traditionally strong team. And now Georgia's got to step up and show. It was just a few weeks ago, actually, Caleb, you asked this question earlier, kind of a crossroads game when Georgia went to Texas. And we said, this is a crossroads game. Texas is the new SEC. There's no way Georgia can go into Texas and beat #1 Texas defense in the country and Steve Sarkisian, the brilliant mind, and not just 1 top 10 NIL quarterback, but 2. And Georgia played really well. So I kind of felt like their backs were to the wall there. This game, definitely, Tennessee has a chance to knock Georgia out and change the narrative. This could be, and I can't remember which one of there's many great journalists up there, but someone wrote program-changing win. If Tennessee goes into Georgia and knocks off Georgia, that is a program-changing win. And the talent fee, they could raise it again and get even more money, because now Josh has shown you what the direction this program is. I saw those facilities, man. I mean, you talk about an infusion of money and facilities and momentum. I think Danny White came outside yesterday. I saw him standing outside talking to a regular person. I mean, things are good.
He's probably shaking that person down for money.
Well, I don't know about that, but
we need that damn talent fee.
I mean, get some more money, get some more players. I mean, Tennessee's got a ton of. This is a program-changing opportunity, Dave. I mean, this changes everything. If Tennessee wins this game, they're in the playoff. They could be in the. They could win the SEC championship for the first time since 2001. Playing the game for the first time since 2007. Hand Kirby back-to-back losses for the first time since 2016. Snap Georgia's 28-game home win streak, which is currently the longest in the nation. I mean, Tennessee is set up to blow up Georgia, but they got to win the game. If they lose the game, what's the narrative? So there's a lot at stake, and both of these teams have reason to believe that they can win the game, and then we can look at both of these teams and pick them apart and say, well, maybe not this team. I think it's a really evenly matched game, and, the old whoever plays better really applies to this one.
Mike, I didn't mean to keep you that long. Let me ask you this real quickly. What's the closest this man ever came to death?
The closest I came to death?
Look at that paratrooper right there. I mean, the intensity, just the guile, man, he's ready to just go out there and take somebody out.
Yeah, I was. That's how they brainwash you. But again, that was a long time ago. I'll tell you a funny story. I actually ran 2 miles in under 10 minutes once. This is true. The drill sergeant told me that if I didn't, he was going to send me home. I think these guys used to bet on us or something, because they would motivate you in ways that probably they shouldn't have. But I was convinced that if I didn't do it, and I just ran as fast as I could 8 times around the track. I mean, and it was everybody running, but they moved me and this guy from Chicago. They said, if you don't do this in under 10 minutes, and all I could imagine was the shame. Oh my gosh, I got kicked out of I was so scared. It was complete fear. So, I mean, but the truth of the matter is, Dave, and I know it's a fun spoof, and it is funny. It was a long time ago. But I
really respect it. I'm
being
dead serious.
I thank God for the opportunity, because I was graduating high school. I had no plan. I had no grades. I had no money. And going in the military gave me an opportunity to earn the GI Bill for college. It taught me a lot about motivation. It gave me an opportunity to serve my country and understand the sacrifices that people made to protect our way of life and our great country. And all you had to do was look at the flag. And that was reason enough. And that's all you needed. You were part of a bigger team, and you had to protect the civilians. Think about how they told it. They were civilian. We weren't. That meant we weren't. If people in the military were civilians, what were we? They would tell us, you're as expendable as a number 2 lead pencil, soldier. I could break you tomorrow and nobody cares. And you learned real fast that there was something a lot bigger to believe in and to fight for. And so I learned a lot about esprit de corps. And I'll tell you, Dave, it's kind of like when we did radio together. Every time I came in, I couldn't wait to serve at your side.
Mike, you're a great man. Thank you for your service this day after Veterans Day. Thank you for the breakdown. I know it's a busy week. We certainly appreciate it. And we'll continue to follow your work. You're on the Twitter at Mike Griffith 32. So the stuff you do is fantastic. Kudos.
I salute you, Dave. Thank you.
Look at that guy salute me. You know, salute me. All right. We appreciate it, Mike. Take care.
All right, man. Take care.
Mike Griffith, Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I didn't mean to keep him that long. He's just that darn good. We appreciate that. I find it very interesting that he said Georgia might be better off with Nico because he could make plays, but Tennessee might be better off with Carson Beck because he's a game manager. I think either quarterback would want to make sure that they didn't have the offensive tackles that Tennessee had earlier in the season that were allowing inside pressure. This day in Tennessee sports history is brought to you by our good friend at Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler. Looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition, rickterryjewelry.com, rickterryjewelry.com. What is our this day in Tennessee sports history, Caleb?
On this day, 92 years ago, in 1932, Tennessee's final year in the Southern Conference, they would actually share the Southern Conference title with under June O'Neal that year. They tied Vanderbilt. Now, here's why that game was significant. The reason they tied Vanderbilt is because the fans were so raucous in the game, and there was they had overpacked Dudley Field so much that the refs had to call the game midway in the game, but for safety reasons. So nobody scored. So Tennessee walks away with the tie. If Tennessee actually gets a chance to play that game, that's the only blemish on their record all year. They win every other game. If they actually get to play that game, they probably win, and they probably go to the Rose Bowl that year.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. I want to thank our friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. You can get $500 off a spa. They include everything that you could potentially need for your spa, including the steps, the cover lift, the chemicals that you will need. They'll deliver it to you within 125 miles there on the Athens exit. You can stop by and say hello. You'll get $500 off, but just say Dave Hooker and Off the Hook Sports sent me, and you'll get a free prize from Off the Hook Sports, which includes T-shirts and or a books, the Celebrate 98 book. They'll take care of you. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from the others is you get everything with any spa purchase. The cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit on I-75. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports for just saying hello. Dynasty Pools and Spas, the Athens exit on I-75. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount. Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out the Dynasty inventory or for your spa and pool chemicals, go to Dynasty Pools and All right, we're going to visit with John Adams next. Stay tuned. His appearance is brought to you by our good friends at Neubert Collision Center. We'll have John coming up here in just a matter of moments with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team you can rely on. Ray Varner Ford and Clinton's strong lineup of vehicles is crafted with the same dedication and hard work that drives our community. Step up your game in this 2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, let's get right to it. We're going to see if John Adams knows who this guy is. John's appearance brought to you by our good friends at Neubert Collision Center. So let's bring John up. As John, how are you, sir? You look fantastic as always.
Thanks, Joe.
Do you care to guess who this person is? Do you have any idea? Young soldier. Any guess?
No, Dave, I don't.
You worked with him. Both of us worked with him.
Okay.
You don't know who it is?
No.
Another hint. He still works covering SEC teams.
Okay. That's great.
Who is it?
I know our listeners care.
Who is it?
I don't know.
That is your boy Mike Griffith back in the day. Look at that. Look at that guy. Huh? Pretty strong, huh? Do we have any pictures of you in the military avoiding service?
Dave, I don't think that's appropriate to say something like that. You never served. I'm a veteran, so.
Are you a veteran? Did you serve during wartime?
Yeah, Dave, I did.
What did you do?
It's a big joke to you, though. That's fine. I mean, why don't you make fun of all the veterans?
No.
It's a big laugh,
the veterans.
That's great, Dave. Make fun of them, okay?
I love the veterans.
Yeah, I can tell.
No, I do.
Uh-huh.
Where were you stationed during what war?
It was during the Vietnam War, Dave.
Where were you stationed?
Well, I was in. Why do you want me to go through all that?
I'm just interested. Caleb, are you interested?
No, it's a big joke to you, Dave.
Caleb, are you interested?
Caleb doesn't care.
Caleb's now interested.
Joke to you.
Where did you serve?
I served at a lot of different stations.
Where?
Where did you serve?
I didn't.
I know.
All right. What for real though? Where'd you serve?
A number of places. Started out at Fort Polk, Louisiana.
How were the I was a Viet Cong there. Are they tough to deal with in Louisiana?
Well, they train people to go to Vietnam at North Fort Polk. It's called Tiger Land. There was a movie made about it.
Did they actually come to you?
I'm sure that would amuse you too. You probably think it's a comedy.
Did they actually come to you at any point and say, "Don't worry about it, you're not going"? What did you do? You in the military to me is the biggest juxtaposition I've come across in my life.
Yeah, well, I took it pretty seriously, Dave.
Okay.
I think people that served with me will know how seriously I took it.
You're deadpanning so much. You didn't take it seriously. I think you may still technically be AWOL.
Of course I did.
I think you're still technically AWOL.
Of course I did.
Okay, sure you did. Make it the poll question, Caleb.
That's a pretty strong charge to make, Dave.
Okay, pure heresy on my part. All right, let's change gears as we've got a lot to get to. Let's go with this. First of all, what did you make of Josh Heupel's comments about Nico Iamaleava on Monday? Any more or less confident that he'll play against Georgia on Saturday?
Yeah, I like the fact that he said he was with us today. Like, oh, I thought he might have left the program.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, he's still here. That's a good thing. So I assume he'll still be with the team when they take the field at Sanford Stadium. That was encouraging.
Yeah. Sarcasm reigns. Now, let me ask you this. If it is Gaston Moore, how far can the Vols go if it's Gaston Moore? And then we'll talk specifically about Georgia. But let's just say if something happened, which, again, I think that Nico's going to play on Saturday, but if something happened to him long-term, how far do you think Gaston Moore could take the Vols, given the fact they've got a great defense and a great running game?
Well, the fact that Tennessee hasn't allowed more than 19 points in the game tells you something. The defense can pretty much keep it in any game. Gaston Moore is limited in what he can do. I don't want him throwing any deep outs. He's got a pretty nice touch on a deep ball. He really knows the offense. He can hand the ball to Dylan Sampson. So, I mean, I think Tennessee, even without Nico Iamaleava against Georgia, still would be competitive. Because when you look at what's going on the other side, Carson Beck, I mean, he keeps turning the ball over. He's not protecting the ball. He looks unsure of himself. Interceptions, fumbles. Georgia's running back, Nate Frazier, best running back, keeps fumbling the ball. So I don't see why Tennessee couldn't stay in the game. As long as it doesn't commit turnovers, if it could protect the ball, play great defense, it could stay in the game with Georgia.
All right, Caleb, I want you to jump in there. Our new poll question is this. How far can the Vols go with Gaston Moore? And that's beat UGA, win the SEC, win the national title, or all is lost. Caleb?
John, I want to throw out something crazy to you, and I want to know your response because I never throw anything crazy out, ever. But
no, I've never heard of that. Man, that's crazy. Go ahead.
I think Tennessee has a better chance of beating Georgia with Gaston Moore than they do Vanderbilt with Gaston Moore. And the reason I say that, and I want to know your thoughts real quick. Tennessee could play conservative brand football at Georgia, kind of like you covered that 2003 Miami game where the Fulmer strategy was just play conservative because you know Brock Berlin and Miami's offense is going to collapse and just let them lose it. You can bank on Carson Beck doing that this weekend. I don't think you can necessarily bank on Diego Pavia just choking against you like that. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I really, and I wish him well, but I don't think Diego Pavia would finish the game against Tennessee's defense. A lot of quarterbacks haven't. He's gotten pretty bunged up all season. So I think that would be, to me, Vanderbilt's biggest concern. I think Vanderbilt could stay in the game with Tennessee with him healthy 100%. He could hang in there if Tennessee had Gaston Moore at quarterback. It'd be a low-scoring game. But no, I would still yeah, that is a little crazy.
I mean,
think about
Dave, do you disagree? Do you not think that Georgia?
Sorry, no. I think the world of you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Crazy.
No, I think
Good, John.
No,
You're a
I think
good
it's
guy.
Crazy. Because I think that Georgia as a whole is a better football team than Vanderbilt. I think we would all agree with that, despite what Vanderbilt has done.
Who would you put money on imploding as a quarterback, though? I think Carson Beck could be this year's Brock Berlin.
I see where you're kind of going there. He could implode, but maybe Diego Pavia wouldn't. But just the supporting cast makes me think that Georgia is scarier than Vanderbilt, even if there is an implosion. My question for you, John, is can Tennessee beat Georgia if they didn't have Nico? I mean, at some point during the week, Josh Heupel, if he's misleading us a little bit because of the injury situation, if Nico's iffy, he might have to give a lot of those first team snaps to Gaston Moore, and we have to remember that Nico's still a redshirt freshman. So could at some point could Josh Heupel say to himself, "We got to go the Gaston Moore route"?
No, I think if Nico can play, he's playing the whole game. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But with Gaston Moore, again, if Tennessee could play a turnover-free game against Georgia with Gaston Moore at quarterback, it would be in the game. Now, when I look at the betting line, when it first came, the first one I saw was 11.5 points, Georgia favored. And now I think the line's 9 points?
Yes.
That's the last one I saw. Well, see, to me, that tells me that the odds makers think Nico isn't playing.
I agree.
No way I would give Tennessee 9 points against Georgia.
Yeah, but John, if Nico's not playing, would you still take Tennessee on the spread with that?
Yes.
Interesting. So I guess the question is, do you think Tennessee will still be able to run the ball they've been running the way they've been running it if they don't have the Nico and the threat of a big play from him in there with Gaston? I think that's the one concern.
Yeah, it is a concern, but I think it might be able to run it well enough. I think it would need to get creative with its run choices. But I think it could run some on Georgia. Georgia's defense is not elite. I mean, it's like, I don't know, 5th or 6th in the SEC. It's not a typical Georgia defense. It just is with a defense in front that goes out there and just shuts down people. So I think there's a chance to run the ball some on Georgia. Ole Miss didn't have great success against it, but it ran well enough. So I think that's a possibility. But and I think if Nico's playing, Gaston Moore is not a running threat. Nico is somewhat of a running threat. I think Tennessee also, his name doesn't come up, but if you're going to be running the ball, I would play Merkling or some against Georgia because he's a better runner than Gaston Moore is.
What do you think Georgia misses more this season? Is it playmakers on offense, such as Bowers-McConkey, or is it an elite defense? What do you think they're missing more this year? Or you can say consistent play at quarterback.
Yeah, all of the above, really. But the missing playmakers factors into what Carson Beck is doing. I think Carson Beck got very comfortable having Brock Bowers, who was hurt some last year, but you saw it against Alabama in that championship game. Brock Bowers played. He wasn't at 100%. Land McConkey, Georgia's best receiver, wasn't at 100%. That affects Carson Beck. Carson Beck needs playmakers. He doesn't create that much as some of the other quarterbacks in this league can. He just doesn't do it.
Yeah, so Dave, do you want to transition just in general to the issues of Carson Beck as a quarterback?
Yeah, we do. But I want to get, if I can, for a second, is the fact that Georgia doesn't have an elite defense when it looked like they had things rolling and they didn't have to compete, or they don't have to compete against Nick Saban any longer. They don't have elite playmakers. If you're a Georgia fan, do you feel like the glory days are behind you? Because let's not forget, Vince Dooley won a championship, could have won, probably should have won 2, and then he went 20 years without winning one. So there is precedent in Athens for that sort of thing.
No, I don't think Georgia fans look at it that way. I don't think Georgia's on the brink of fading out of the top 10. It's still recruiting well. It has had a bad run of injuries to running backs. That hasn't helped it. Its offensive line seems bunged up. In fact, everybody in the SEC, there seem to be more injuries than ever this season. Tennessee's been fortunate in that regard. One of the things when you start talking about Carson Beck and Kirby Smart, go back to when Kirby Smart wants a system quarterback, and Beck is. He didn't really want Stetson Bennett, but Stetson Bennett kept beating out everybody. And he won, and Georgia won offensively because they were able to go outside the system. They're not doing that now. I would give Gunnar Stockton a chance the way Carson Beck is playing. Gunnar Stockton is more athletic. He can run the ball. We saw what Texas A&M did against LSU earlier this year when it changed quarterbacks, went to a running quarterback. A lot of that had to do with LSU's deficiencies on defense. But I do think Kirby tends to stick with one guy. And he wanted JT Daniels to be his quarterback back then. But Stetson Bennett was just better. And they won 2 national championships because of it. I mean, Georgia won with a playmaking quarterback, not a system quarterback. Now it has a system quarterback.
I think we all would have entered this season saying that Georgia has the best roster, but John and I were talking, setting up the show last night, and he doesn't necessarily think so. John's appearance brought to you by Neubert Collision Center.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. if you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe New.
John, who do you think has the most talented roster in the SEC?
Texas, even though it lost to Georgia.
Yeah.
But I think Ole Miss is really close.
So you got Georgia third at best.
Yeah.
Pretty strong. All right. Let's change gears here for a second because I want to talk specifically about quarterbacks, and that is how bad is Carson Beck? Is Carson Beck the type of quarterback that could cost? Yeah, I mean, is he the type of quarterback that could cost Georgia a run at the national championship?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I mean, you think of winning a national championship, you need a playmaker at quarterback. I mean, again, I'm bringing up Stetson Bennett. That's why Georgia's defense was great. Yeah, but when it came down to beating Ohio State in a semifinal game, it needed to score 40-something points, and Stetson Bennett was able to accomplish that. So Georgia not only doesn't have a playmaker at quarterback, it has a guy you can't trust. I was exchanging texts with a friend of mine who's a Georgia fan. I said, "Does Carson Beck scare you?" He wrote back, "He terrifies me." Halloween hadn't ended in Athens.
John, a guy I used to work with who's a Georgia fan, who covers Georgia at a network I used to work with covering college football, was talking over the weekend and basically said that, and I want to know if you see this analysis. He said Carson Beck takes Brett Favre risk without the Brett Favre arm talent. How do you feel of that assessment?
Yeah, see what he's getting at, because he does. He might. I think he has arm talent. He's very accurate. He's got a smooth release. He can get rid of the ball quickly. But you're right. I mean, that's going on at LSU too with Garrett Nussmeier. He's just falling off the map with his throwing. He's trying to put the ball in these tight spaces. Seemed to be working for a while. It's not working now. Beck's trying to do the same thing. So I don't think that's an unfair analogy. And don't you think, and that's where Brock Bowers again kind of fits into it, if you threw the ball to Brock Bowers and the ball was kind of anywhere around him, you didn't mind throwing it to tight spaces, because if there's a guy on him or maybe two in the vicinity, you kind of figure that he'll make the play. He's the one that'll come down with the ball. Georgia doesn't have anybody like that.
I agree. The most recent Nico, let's say from the second half of Alabama on until he was held out against Mississippi State, would you take him or would you take Carson Beck? Don't forget to use the promo code HOOKED when it comes to TristarHatsCo.com.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TristarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TristarHatsCo.com. That's TristarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TristarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without...
John, would you take Nico as of late or Carson Beck, given what he did and has done this year, but what he did last year as well?
I'd probably take Nico.
What about you?
I think Nico played better the last 2 games. it's kind of, based on how he was playing early, if you look at his whole body of work and you look at Carson Beck's, you could say, yeah, well, Carson Beck's better. However, we got to talk about what's happening right now. And Carson Beck doesn't have the playmakers, as we've mentioned repeatedly. He doesn't have the playmakers that he had last season. I mean, I don't think Nico has great playmakers either. But he's a better runner than even though Nico's a better runner than Carson Beck.
Caleb, I'll tell you why I would take Nico over Beck. And Nico's had issues with fumbling, and he's had issues running out of bounds when he shouldn't have. He's had issues with interceptions in the coverage, maybe even staring down receivers. But those are all freshman-like mistakes. Those are not mistakes that a senior should be making. He shouldn't be turning the ball over as a senior, even without his playmakers. So I'm with John, Caleb, on that one. I would take Nico if I had to choose between the two for the remainder of the season.
I mean, I would take Nico for the remainder of the season too, largely because he's just better. I mean, we're saying Nico versus Beck, but I would take Nico over Carson Beck. The one similarity they have, I'll say this. Carson Beck's struggling right now with his best pass blocker out. We saw what Nico looked like when Lance Hurd was recovering from an ankle injury and still playing hurt. And I don't know what was wrong with John Campbell, but something was wrong with John Campbell earlier in the year. So I don't know if we would have said this 4 weeks ago when those things were happening. So it could just be coming down to their pass protection. But I will say at the same time, Dave, you're right. Nico is a freshman, redshirt freshman at that. Carson Beck, I mean, he's looking like one of the worst quarterbacks in the SEC right now. And that's crazy to think about.
John, I think there will be a poster child for a guy that got his NIL money and was happy with it. And I think it's John Calipari who says tripping over nickels to get to millions. I think that's his phrase. I think Carson Beck right now may be that poster boy of a guy that if he invests his money right, he's financially independent. Sure, it'd be great to be an NFL quarterback, but financial independence is a big deal. I think he might end up being the poster boy for NIL gone wrong and getting that money up front. He's flaunted his Lambo. He's done all that. And I talk to people that cover Georgia and sources in Athens, and he just has the leadership skills of, I don't know, that baseball cap you're wearing.
You wouldn't follow this baseball cap into battle. When I look at Carson Beck, and this guy, the first time I ever saw him, flashback, the first time I ever saw him, and you can't judge somebody on their appearance all the time, but Carson Beck, I mean, if you get ready to make a last minute drive, and Carson Beck comes into the huddle, would he inspire you? He's just got this blank kind of stone look about him. He's always had that. And he had a really good season last year. And he was considered a high first-round draft pick. So it's not like he's a total bust or anything. But I never thought of him as this fiery leader, the guy that runs into the huddle before that your last championship. He goes in there and says, "Hey, what's up?"
Agreed. Hey, how's it going? Let me ask you both this. Caleb, you start me off. Knowing what we know about Stetson Bennett, who I think we had underrated during his career, he was a fiery leader. His mobility came into play. We believe Nico has better overall athletic ability, right? But what you know about Stetson Bennett and what he did, and I think he played at Georgia for 9.5 years. But if you were able to get that, would you take Stetson Bennett or Nico?
I like long term or this year?
I'm saying what you know now, you can pick one to start the beginning of the season as a true freshman or redshirt freshman or whatever he is.
I'm going to take Nico. I think part of the Stetson Bennett thing is he made plays when necessary, but I saw Stetson Bennett to Georgia as you guys both covered him. What do you guys think? Stetson Bennett was Georgia's T. Martin. That's what he was.
Oh, no. He was way better than T. Martin. Yeah, T. Martin was a good runner. He was he made big plays like Stetson Bennett does. But if you go back and look at Stetson Bennett's overall passing accuracy, T got better. But man, if I had Georgia's team and I want to go into the season, I'd take Stetson Bennett. I wouldn't even think about it. I mean, I'm not talking about pro potential or what this guy might become, but just based because I saw what he could do. I hadn't seen what that. I guarantee you, Stetson Bennett wouldn't have run out of bounds on the last play of the game like Nico did.
If you're taking the Georgia talent, okay, what about this? Stetson Bennett or Greg McElroy?
Stetson Bennett.
Oh, Stetson Bennett. Jeez.
I mean, Greg McElroy did win a national championship and scored 37 points on Texas.
By handing the ball to great running backs.
I'd take Stetson Bennett if I had to run over Greg McElroy in a car.
All right, what about one more two-time national champion on a team loaded with talent? Stetson Bennett or A.J. McCarron?
Again, I would run over A.J. McCarron. Yeah, I think Caleb, a lot of people, and I think you're still in this category, undervalued Stetson Bennett. I was a part of that group until his final year.
No, I think we just undervalued how bad Carson Beck is.
Well, maybe it's a little bit of both, but
Stetson Bennett was a great college quarterback. Not good, a great quarterback. The greatest good gift a quarterback can have, we saw it with Tom Brady, different level, but is the ability to raise his game to the highest level when it mattered most. And Stetson Bennett did that time and time again.
It's Christian Laettner. So he was. Why are you laughing at that? It's a good comparison.
One game-winning shot, one time.
Christian Laettner is the best college basketball player in the history of college basketball.
No, he's not. It's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Hey, what are you doing? What are you talking about?
All right. Our friends at Work Trucks, they're all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down and has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks, cargo vans, utility body trucks with an app-hide work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Truck supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks, and that's a fact. Service industry, remember Work Trucks. Work Trucks carries the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville, downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go online to worktrucksllc.com. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Don't risk your future and business on a wrong piece of equipment that burns your time. Work Trucks will make sure you have the perfect vehicle that you have to have. They'll even find a perfect truck, outfit it, and make sure it fits your needs to a T. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Work Trucks with an X, LLC.com. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. Coming up on the program, do we want to get to stat of the day, or do we want to get to Eli being Eli? I love Eli Drinkwitz doing Eli Drinkwitz things. The most transparent person, perhaps, in the history of the SEC. The show brought to you in part by our friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from the others is you get everything with any spa purchase. The cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemical. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit on I-75. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports for just saying hello. Dynasty Pools and Spas, the Athens exit on I-75. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount. Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out the Dynasty inventory or for your spa and pool chemicals, go to Dynasty Pools and. All right, John, we want to get to the stat of the day. Caleb, what's our stat of the day for today?
Josh Heupel, by beating Mississippi State last weekend, guaranteed himself a second winning season in SEC play in 4 years. That ties the entire number of winning seasons in SEC play in the post-Fulmer era before he was hired. From Lane Kiffin to Jeremy Pruitt and Butch Jones and Derek Dooley combined, all had 2 winning seasons in SEC play, and Josh Heupel got 2 in 4 years.
John, are you willing to say bank on it that Josh Heupel is a better coach than Jeremy Pruitt, Butch Jones, and Derek Dooley?
Yeah, and if Greg McElroy became a coach, he'd be better than him too.
Bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC. Life made better. Bank on it. Josh Heupel, a better coach than those other 3 bozos.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank.
I just got a text from Brent Musburger who wanted to weigh in on the A.J. McCarron.
Oh my gosh, I know where you're going.
Listen, well, I'm going to tell you something. That girl at AJ's got, she's what I call a co-ed, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I tell you what, she could co-ed me anytime.
Chattanooga Mortgage, congratulations. Your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chatmortgage.com, chatmortgage.com.
Well, you just look her. I tell you what, that girl is.
This show has gone so off the rails today.
Wait, we just got on our Twitter board, Dave. Steven says Carson Beck equals Gomer Pyle. Carson Beck has gone for a first-round draft pick, Heisman Trophy candidate, high Heisman Trophy candidate, to Gomer Pyle.
That's Mike Griffith, not Gomer Pyle, everybody. All right. John, Caleb set us up for our next topic. And if you want me to, I'll do this entire segment, Caleb, as people hit the like and subscribe button. I can do it in my Brent Musburger creepy voice.
Guys, I'm going to tell you, I was too young for the Andy Griffith show, so I had to look up that reference. Yeah. And I can't whistle. All right, so setting up this next topic.
Real quick, though, if I can. I don't mean to interrupt. But at what age should you stop looking at young 20-year-old girls as being attractive, or at least not voice that opinion, John? What age is that? I'm 50. Can I still do it?
Yeah, you can do it.
Hey, man, he's real good looking. I mean,
I want to keep doing it. You just do your own show like that.
The real question is, when will Lane Kiffin stop seeing 20-year-old girls as attractive?
Yeah, Lane Kiffin at some point wins a couple national titles. He's a play-by-play broadcaster. He's the color commentator, and he's like Brent Musburger's age. He's 70 years old. And he goes,
you know what I like about them 20-year-olds? They stay the same age, but I keep getting older.
That sounds like how Ed Orgeron might think too, but you know.
What about Joe Willie Namath?
Oh my gosh, I want to kiss you. I don't care about the game right now. I want to kiss you.
Lane's appearance brought to you by Blue Chews. All right, so Caleb, what do we got up next? Let's quiz John on your next topic.
Talk a little college football playoff. John, I know you and Dave were speaking about whether or not a 2-loss SEC team should get in over a 1-loss Penn State or Indiana team based on their resumes. Well, as you guys were talking about that, and Dave told me you guys were talking about that, it came out that Eli Drinkwitz of Missouri, obviously the Missouri head coach, says that 10-2 SEC teams should get automatic bids, period, end of story. Said that yesterday. Now, we know why Eli Drinkwitz is saying that, because Missouri is going to be the most fraudulent 10-2 team in the history of 10-2 teams in the SEC this year, because they have played a garbage schedule. But my question is, does he have a point against an Indiana or Penn State, neither of whom have beaten anybody worth their salt this year?
Yes.
Yeah, he has a point. But strength of schedule isn't the only factor in it. And that's a valid point, because he has, his schedule. But when I watch Indiana, if Indiana and Missouri were playing this week, I'd make Indiana about a 12 to 14 point favorite.
Indiana?
It's a better team than Missouri, and it would be more competitive in the playoffs than Missouri did. Remember, Missouri got blown. That's another sidebar to the schedule issue. And that was a really, really bad loss. So watch part of that game. It was never close.
Sorry,
and
you cut out.
factor,
which was a bad loss?
The A&M game. I mean, A&M just hammered Missouri.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they did.
So, I mean, if that had been a close game, Eli would have had a much better point. The thing also, when I look at Indiana and Penn State, and they both factor into this SEC debate as to whether the SEC could get 5 teams in, Penn State, the brand is a factor there. If I look at Indiana's body of work and Penn State's, and I watch the teams play, I like Indiana better than I do Penn State. And at least you don't know what Indiana will do against Ohio State. You might think you do, but you don't know. We saw Penn State against Ohio State. Penn State did what it always does against Ohio State. I trust Indiana's quarterback more than I do Penn State's. I just think when I look at Penn State, nobody seems to question Penn State, which has 1 loss. What's its best win?
No, I agree.
Illinois?
Let's talk about that for a second. I think the SEC is perhaps down in that they don't have an elite team, but in some ways they're up, because I think 1 through 8, maybe even deeper than that, is really, really good. So I think every year has to be taken at different face value. And I'll tell you this, I think that a 10-2 SEC team, face value, and we can expect their records, their big wins, their tough losses, and all that, should get in above an 11-1 Big Ten team that half of the teams they play aren't any good. So aside from Oregon, I would say that a 10-2 SEC team should get in above an 11-1 Penn State or Indiana team. Am I crazy, John, to say that?
Well, I think you are in Missouri's case.
Well, okay.
Missouri's got an inflated record. We know that. I mean, when you watch them play, that they eked out a win over Vanderbilt. I watched them against Boston College. It's just kind of a little bit of better than mediocre team. So, but you're right. But everybody else, when you look at a 10-2 team in the SEC, I could see that in the committee. The committee likes the SEC. I thought, going into the season, I thought 5 SEC teams would make the playoff. I thought there'd be 3 from the Big Ten and 5 from the SEC. Then I changed my mind after Southern Cal beat LSU, Notre Dame beat Texas A&M. But now I'm kind of going back to what I thought in preseason. I think the SEC has a good shot at getting 5 teams in. It will depend on how some games play out. You'll have to avoid upsets, because when you start looking at those schedules, I thought Southern Cal was going to be a factor in the Big Ten. It's no factor at all. But I think, it depends on the schedule. When you look at Georgia, if Georgia, here's another possible scenario. Let's just assume there's some upsets. A 9-3 Georgia against a 10-2 Big Ten team. I would take Georgia.
Yep, I wouldn't have an argument with that. Hound Dogs of Knoxville champions look good in orange. HDKnoxville.com. HDKnoxville.com. Caleb?
All right, well, let me throw this scenario out at you, because we're ragging on Missouri, and I agree almost the rest of the SEC that if they go 10-2 should get in over an 11-1 Penn State or Indiana. Sidebar, I do want to point out Penn State has beaten at least 4 teams with winning records, 3 Power 5. Indiana's beaten 1. So their resume is a lot better. But what if Texas A&M at the end of the season beats Texas handily at home? At that point, don't we have to? I know you think Texas has the best roster in the SEC, but based on resume, Texas has played a god-awful schedule too. I mean, it's on Indiana's and Penn State's level and Missouri's level here, what we're talking about. So if Texas doesn't beat Texas A&M and they go 10-2, shouldn't we throw them in the same boat as Missouri at that point, based on resume?
No, I wouldn't do that, because part of this, it's also the eye test. I mean, I can watch Texas and tell it's a lot better than Missouri. If they played, then Texas would win that game by 2 touchdowns or more. So you got to factor that into it. But I do agree, Texas, let's forget about Missouri. We've dismissed them from the conversation. Look at Texas. A 2-loss Texas team would be the most vulnerable of these other SEC playoff contenders, I think, because what's its best win?
Vanderbilt. That's its best win.
Yeah. And then early in the year, it was kind of a big deal that it went into Michigan and won handily, but now we've seen what Michigan can do. Although Michigan did play Indiana close. But
John, let me ask you this, not to interrupt, but if you were on the college football playoff committee and you had to make your final vote today, and they said, listen, here's how we've laid it out. These are the parameters. You get no comparison. You get no leeway. But what 4 teams, because they're only taking 4, and Mr. Adams, give us your 4 SEC teams that are in based off what you've seen to this point. And then a double question, poor journalism on my part. What do you think it will be at the end of the year?
Well, I think if you can only take 4 teams, I would probably take Ole Miss, Alabama, Tennessee.
That's hot.
Gosh, I'd have to take Georgia because it beat Texas in Austin pretty convincingly. I know Texas made a lot of mistakes, but yeah, that would probably be Tennessee's. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say, so hypothetically, like, is this assuming Texas loses to Texas A&M at the end of the year and they're all 10-2? Because that's how this would have to work out.
Well, that was
I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about right now.
Oh, right now. Okay.
So the second part of that question is, who do you think, if it were just 4 teams, that it will be? If everything goes chalk, which I guess would be Tennessee losing to Georgia, even though I've already picked Tennessee to win that game.
Yeah, if it goes, but see, I think Tennessee's going to beat Georgia, so that factors into it. So I think it would be Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, and Ole Miss.
That's
A&M would be knocked out. I still think Texas is going to beat Texas A&M. And in preseason, I had A&M making the playoff, but I like Texas a little more.
John's hot takes so hot they can only be controlled by Double D piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best.
All right, we got dumb coaches coming up in our football IQ segment with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. John Adams' appearance is brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. Give me 2 minutes, then we'll point out the dumbest coaches in college football, and they're not hard to find. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
2024 F-150 4x4 Super Crew STX, $46,994. 24 Ford Expedition XLT, $59,978. 24 F-250 Crew Cab 4x4 STX, $57,888.
Local you trust, performance you can afford.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
He tries very hard. The Dave Hooker Show.
All I know is when we win a game, it's a team win. When we lose a game, it's a team loss.
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Touchdown! Unbelievable!
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Definitely Caleb's favorite segment of the week and one of mine as well. We talk coaching IQ, as Caleb likes to make fun of coaches and their lack of intellect, which, John, is not incredibly difficult to do, as I pointed out earlier.
But we know it's difficult for John because he loves coaches. John Adams holds coaches in the highest of esteem, right, John?
They're on a pedestal.
That's right. They're better than us, and yes, not just gym coaches. All right, so it is time for our coaching IQ segment. Caleb, go ahead and get us rolling. It's part of the last look. We saved the best for last. Brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. What do you got?
Did y'all watch UCF and Arizona State over the weekend at all? Anybody have a little fun with that? I like watching some Big 12 games.
Man, I don't know how did you, with all that was going on, I never thought about that game.
No,
I think
I
saw
ESPN was making fun of giving updates on that game. By the way, I can't remember. Is it Matt Berry? I think's his name. Was joking around saying, "Yeah, for those of you that care about this game, which is nobody."
Well, on a 4th and 2, trailing by 4 points. UCF had the ball on the Arizona State 29-yard line, 4th and 2. Gus Malzahn and his genius decided in the fourth quarter, late in the fourth quarter, I need to go kick a field goal with the kicker who's never made a field goal beyond 40 yards in his career, rather than just go for it. And of course, he missed the field goal.
Do you think, Caleb, you're an expert on coaches' IQ? Do you think coaches that make more money, that it lowers their IQ, that it just drops as their bank account rises, the IQ drops? Gus Malzahn, he's made a lot of money.
I think, and you see this more in the NFL than college, by the way, funny enough. It's actually even more common in the NFL, the level of stupid decisions they make. I think what happens is they choose to never buck what conventional wisdom says, i.e. go for it on fourth down or anything like that, because they would rather not get blamed for being aggressive and failing than get blamed for being careful and not failing. Does that make sense? They're scared of the backlash they're going to get if they're aggressive and it doesn't work out.
Sure.
I think that's what it is.
All right.
So,
Who's next, Caleb? Yes, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No,
right.
you.
Okay. Fourth, another failure of this San Diego. I watched. I didn't watch this, but my brother texted me about it, so I had to go watch it. Y'all remember Bronco Mendenhall used to go to Boise State?
Yeah, he's the one that proposed to that chick, right?
Which one are you talking about? No, you're talking about. So San Diego State, he's was playing New Mexico over the weekend, funny enough. And San Diego State's head coach, believe it or not, his name is Brian Dutcher. So he was going, I'm sorry, not Brian Dutcher, excuse me, Sean Lewis. Sean Lewis is their football coach. He was going up against Bronco Mendenhall. And neither coach was great. Bronco Mendenhall pulled it out. But Sean Lewis decided when San Diego State was trailing 21-16 twice in the fourth quarter. One time he got the ball at the 30 on a 4th and 5 and decided to punt it, trailing 21-16 in the fourth quarter. Then he decided to punt it again.
Yeah, jackass.
Then he decided to punt it again when he got the ball on his final drive. And spoiler alert, they didn't get the ball back with a chance to win.
It's got to sting.
Bronco. What would Brent Musburger
No, this was
say
Brian
about
Dutcher this was Sean Lewis that did this. Bronco benefited from it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I confused the dumb coaches.
What do you got next?
All right. Up next, our old beautiful veteran Kirk. The rest are just timeout failures, guys, because they were some of the greatest of the weekend. But our old favorite, beautiful veteran Kirk Ferentz, just a tremendous veteran of coaching, guys, and at Iowa. We see why they stick with them. Iowa was about to get the ball back against UCLA. A third down was coming up. There were about 2 minutes and 11 seconds left. Kirk Ferentz used a timeout there. Now, why was it stupid for him to use the timeout? You gave UCLA the option to throw the ball on the next play because the 2-minute warning was coming up, so it didn't matter if the clock was stopped. So the 2-minute warning coming up, you don't burn the timeout there. You save your timeout for when you get the ball back.
You suck, you jackass.
Big time, yeah.
I think maybe he forgot the 2-minute warning exists.
What's wrong? Even your family hates you. Go ahead.
Do you think it's possible that some coaches as old as like Kirk Ferentz that have been in it for so long just forget the 2-minute warning exists? Do you think it's like what you talked about that Curly Hallman story one time, John, where they're like, oh, I didn't know that I had to defer.
No, that was actually that was Jerry Stovall, but yeah, Curly might have done the same thing. He took some shots to the head in his day. Yeah, I mean, I was watching that game, and I really thought Iowa would win that game.
I did too. All right, so the top two
are they're playing with they got out to like their 5th quarterback. Good gosh.
So getting to the top two are 2 blue bloods and 2 brilliant coaches and brains and more timeout usage. But Sherrod Moore against Indiana had a chance to get the ball back. But I don't know if you guys saw this on an Indiana running play when they were running the clock. Sherrod Moore waited 30 seconds to take a timeout. 30 seconds. He comes back in the post-game press. He's like, we just kind of wanted to see the play they were lining up to run. They were going to run the ball. Like they were trying to run the clock out. You need the time. You need the 30 seconds. And he waits 30 seconds to take a timeout.
Well, very cerebral people are sometimes guilty of overthinking, and I think that's what was going on there.
Well, and he not only in that regard, but he reminds me, Moore was an offensive line coach, so Philip Fulmer taking over the Vols in '92. I think there's a big similarity there, and as far as intelligence and what they're able to bring to the table day in and day out. Last week brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. The final one, ccteyes.com.
The first step to better vision is to visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at ccteyes.com.
All right, give us our last one. John's got to get out of here. He's got a busy day.
All right, Mario Cristobal always saves his stupidest moments for Georgia Tech. Miami, Georgia Tech, they were trailing. They were having a chance at a game-winning drive. Georgia Tech runs the ball, hits the 2-minute warning. It's 4th down coming out of the 2-minute warning. Coming out of the 2-minute warning with the clock stopped, Mario Cristobal burns a timeout because he wants to prepare his team for a fake punt.
Yeah.
Now, don't you do that during the 2-minute warning?
Yeah, what do they do during the 2-minute warning? Just smoke them if you got them?
Light them up, boys.
And Miami lost, by the way, but that was right there with Butch Jones using a timeout against Florida to say we didn't have our field goal block team on when Florida was trying a 50-something yard field goal.
Even when Miami was unbeaten and breezing along, didn't you think there would be a game like that with Miami at some point?
With Mario Cristobal as head coach? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I used to be really high on him. Speaking of, portions of the program brought to you by the Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOK for 10% off. HOOK for 10% off. John, we'll let you out of here. Your appearance brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. As always, we appreciate you. You absolutely bring it. Salute.
I would like to have one more Brett Musburger comment for you.
Okay. I can do that. I tell you what I like to do. I like to go down to that Asian Cafe. You get the girls down there at Asian Cafe. You can go to asiancafe.org. They got them guarded family recipes. And I'll tell you what, they have a couple pops in them at the bar. Easy pickings. asiancafe.org.
You know what? I don't think you sound anything like Brett Musburger, but
nothing.
It really makes me laugh.
I know. It doesn't sound, but he was so creepy with the AJ McCarron thing.
That was
actually, it's more, you're looking live at such and such.
Well, after the kick 6 when Auburn lost to Alabama, which I know Dave says I talk about a lot, but that's to me my favorite moment in sports history. I think it was such a beautiful moment and just of the theater. The first thing the CBS cameras cut to is AJ McCarron going over to hug his girlfriend. I'm like, I don't care about his girlfriend. This is a spectacle of the fans celebrating one of the greatest moments in college football history. And you got to go show his girlfriend like hugging AJ McCarron. Like, that's not the moment here, guys.
Yeah,
Brett Musburger would have voted for it.
Yeah, I bet Brent Musburger's got that video on his phone that he uses at special times alone. All right, John, thank you, sir. Have a fantastic day. We appreciate it. John Adams brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. You want to give us a quick? You did say Tennessee beats Georgia. Are you standing by that? Is that our pick for today?
No, I was just kidding.
Okay,
of course, I'm standing by it, Dave. Yeah,
great stuff. He's John Adams. I'm Dave Hooker for Caleb Calhoun. I appreciate it. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Other attorneys say they'll settle or they'll fight for you in court. They won't. Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, play to win, banksandjones.com. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.